Support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum. Located in Jennings City Hall, the museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is a historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. Additional support provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
I wrote 298 pages about growing up on Scopena from the age of 6 to 16.
Former Governor Buddy Roemer talks about his new book and life today after a stroke. Hi everyone, I'm Andre Morrow. Much more on former Governor Buddy Roemer in a moment, but right now on the state we're in, let's look at the week's headlines. The October 14th primary election likely set an all-time record for lowest voter turnout in Louisiana, about 13.5%. It's causing Secretary of State Tom Shedler to further rethink how we hold elections. He says taxpayer money could be much more wisely spent. In the race for treasurer, Republican John Schroeder finished second, but is the favorite to win the November 18th runoff. Democrat Derek Edwards won the primary over Schroeder, 31 to 24%, but is oddly expected to have little chance in the runoff. Voters said yes to 3 more changes to the state constitution, most notably a property tax exemption for spouses of first responders and law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty. There's a runoff in the race for New Orleans mayor between city councilwoman LaToya Cantrell and former judge Desiree Charbonnet. Dr. Craig Green of Baton Rouge was elected Public Service Commissioner. On Monday, scientists who won a Nobel Prize for their discovery of gravitational waves, or ripples in the fabric of space, announced the first detection of the collision of 2 neutron stars. The LIGO team alerted astronomers from all over the world, helping them point their telescopes so they could record unprecedented observations of the aftermath. The head of the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority told the Baton Rouge Press Club this week that Louisiana is now losing a football field of land every 100 minutes compared to every hour a few years ago. That was a fact highlighted in a TV ad. Still very bad. More than 120 critical projects in the 50-year, $50 billion Coastal Master Plan will work to reverse land loss caused by levees built along the Mississippi River and boat channels dredged through coastal wetlands. Work marches on, even with roadblocks about climate change that may come from policy changes in Washington.
We here, in putting the master plan together, I'm going to tell you, really haven't paid attention and don't really care much about what Congress thinks about sea level rise. We're seeing a change.
Louisiana and Lafayette in particular are #1 in America in the creation and operation of a hurricane mega shelter. The Cajun Dome became the nation's first mega shelter after Hurricane Katrina in 2005. It has become a model for all others. The Distinguished Service Cross and a Purple Heart were awarded to the descendants of Lieutenant Joseph LaFleur. He was an Army chaplain who died in a Japanese torpedo attack during World War II. U.S. Representative Ralph Abraham presented the medals in a ceremony at St. Landry Catholic Church in Opelousas. A big happy birthday to Cecilia Young of Crowley. She turned 106 with a parade and celebration downtown. She rode on a horse and buggy and was given yellow roses by business owners along the route. LSU President Dr. F. King Alexander announced Thursday he is reinstating an alcohol ban on campus Greeks, saying that fraternities and sororities have not taken the situation seriously, this in the wake of the alleged hazing death of a freshman student. Alexander also gave some good news about the school after years of battling budget cuts and fighting to keep TOPS scholarships intact.
This fall, we just welcomed one of our largest incoming groups of new faculty. This cohort of new faculty is 133 strong. Normally, we're bringing in about 72 to help offset retirements of about 87.
Alexander says the new faculty comes from prestigious universities across the U.S. and, in fact, across the world. Former Governor Buddy Roemer has written a book, not about his life in politics or, as Louisiana's 52nd governor, not about his success in business. It's about his growing up on his family's plantation Scopena and how he came to write it.
3 years ago, in July of 14, I had a stroke. Small stroke, but centered in my speech and walking facilities.
This is Buddy Roemer at his office in Baton Rouge. His stroke at first robbed him of his ability to speak. It did not affect his mind or his thoughts. Aggressive physical therapy and a suggestion from his doctor brings us to the reason for our visit today.
He said, what you should do is write. I think you could use to tell a hell of a story.
So he began to write about Scopena, a memoir of home, and the doctor was right.
I wrote 298 pages about growing up on Scopena from the age of 6 to 16 when I went off to college.
Scopena is a place. You can see it from Highway 71 south. But the heart of Scopena, the life of Scopena, the magic of Scopena, the uniqueness of Scopena was Mom and Dad, raising 5 kids under a philosophy that ignored what the rest of the world thought and that emphasized individual effort. With Mom and Dad gone, I want to tell the story of Scopena. He remembers well his first day of school, the first grade. He did not love it. And after a few hours, right before lunch, his opportunity to sneak out and run back home came. Exactly how he would navigate the 12 miles to Scopena, he did not know.
But you wound up at this grocery store where the grocery owner took care of you, gave you a Coke, and called your dad, and your dad came. It's interesting, you anticipated his reaction to be different, perhaps, than it was.
I anticipated him to get angry with me.
As he waited, he nervously wondered.
Dad might not like this independent streak. I saw his red pickup, and I said, I'm in trouble now.
But he wasn't.
He rubbed in my head and said, let's go home, buddy.
Let's go home.
Let's go home. Let's go to Scopena. It was the greatest drive we ever made.
Yeah.
Him and me.
Roemer's mother, Adeline Roemer, was peacemaker, deal maker, and much, much more.
You were close to her, it sounds like.
I'm very close to my mother. She was a wonderful mother. She was very skilled with people. She taught us homeschooling for a long time. And then I graduated from Bossier High School. The book tells the story of Mom deciding that I would not go to college early.
Harvard wanted to enroll him early, but his mom said no and had a very specific reason why.
He's going to be governor of Louisiana, and he'll graduate from high school in Louisiana.
Now, this had never been discussed, but his mom knew her son's potential well, something he realized with the Roemer Revolution campaign of 1987. He was 44.
Some insiders say I'm not a good politician because I say things that make some people angry. They're right. I do. Made some people in Washington angry when I refused to take a congressional pay raise, passed by the politicians, for the politicians. That doesn't surprise you, does it? Politics as usual. I don't like Louisiana politics. I love Louisiana. I love Louisiana enough to make some people angry.
It sounds like she was a great politician.
She was good.
His mom ran for his seat in Congress in 1988 when he became governor, but Roemer says lost because she was a Democrat. Growing up on their 10,000-acre cotton farm in the segregated 1950s, Roemer had a far advanced view of race relations. Again, he says, thanks to his parents.
You never knew at Scopena whether you were white or black. The foremen were white and black. The cotton ginners were white and black, men and women. Dad was very conservative, but when it came to people, he thought every person was valuable. He never used the N-word, never. Dad was hung in effigy by many people who were Ku Klux Klanners. I tell in my book, read it.
I have read it in the past few days. Now, you can pick it up at Barnes & Noble, also online at Amazon for $20. The book is paperback and it reads fast. Now, the federal agency that studies America's natural resources is worried that invasive species may have spread after Hurricane Harvey. It could mean ecological and even economic damage. LPB's Kelly Spires is here with more on that. Kelly?
Thank you, Andre. That's right. Hurricane Harvey's floodwaters may have connected watersheds that aren't normally tied together. The U.S. Geological Survey team made a map that compares known locations of invasive species and projected rainfall levels. Flooding could have allowed these threatening species to move around. Giant salvinia is a native plant species in Louisiana. It crowds out native species in the state's lakes, ponds, and streams. Matt Nielsen with the U.S. Geological Survey helped create an online map that he hopes local wildlife managers will use to keep a lookout for non-native plants and animals like giant salvinia.
The map initially has some outlines overlaid over an area of South Louisiana and eastern Texas. So they're the outlines of sections of streams and rivers that comprise a watershed, so a section where all the water will flow into one place.
If you select giant salvinia from the drop-down menu, you can see that it may have moved to new places, like the Whiskey Chitto, the West Fork Calcasieu watershed, or the Mermentau headwaters.
The light green indicates watersheds where we have records of established populations within this region. And then the darker greens are adjacent watersheds where there is the potential for spread due to these flooding events.
He says when there are large rainfall events, watersheds that weren't connected before can link.
So we could either have active movement. So for example, with fish, they could swim across a flooded field that might connect two watersheds. Or you could have passive dispersal. For example, those planktonic organisms, things that live within the water itself, or things that live on top of the water, such as floating aquatic vegetation, could be passively carried from one watershed to another with rising floodwaters.
Local managers can also select a specific watershed and see what species were known to have been in the area and what may have spread after the hurricane. William Kelso studies invasive species at LSU.
Our newest floating invasive is giant salvinia, Salvinia molesta. And it got here sometime after 2000, has become incredibly abundant in some parts of the state. It floats on the water with the leaves like this, and then as it gets denser and denser, the leaves actually turn up and it looks like an accordion. And they'll just pack in there, completely cover the surface. I've seen pictures of people walking on giant salvinia, I mean large people walking on it. They don't fall through.
Its thick foliage limits the ability for anything else to grow.
You're not having any photosynthesis underneath the mat because there's no sunlight getting through. So if you look underneath those mats, there's really nothing there. There really aren't fish. The phytoplankton is not there. Zooplankton, the water will often be black colored, has virtually no oxygen in it, so it isn't going to support anything that needs to breathe underwater.
There are two more aquatic plant species to look out for, Kelso says. That's water hyacinth and hydrilla. They grow differently, but their effects are the same. Like all invasive species, they're on a different playing field than native plants. They grow incredibly fast, and there are few, if any, predators. Asian carp are another thing to be worried about. Kelso says bighead and silver carp are the kinds to look out for in Louisiana. Nielsen's map points to the Atchafalaya and adjacent watersheds as potential areas of spread. Kelso says their only predators are largemouth bass, and that's only for the early part of their life cycle.
So you're looking at a bass that may grow to be 6, 8, 10 pounds, being able to eat something that's maybe 1 or 2 pounds. These invasive carps can grow to that size if they have enough food, probably in months. And so they have the next 20 years to be essentially invulnerable to anybody except humans.
How is the state managing these species currently? For plants, there are herbicides, but those are expensive, Kelso says.
There have been devices developed that collect plants, particularly water hyacinth in Florida. There are these large, they look like an aquatic combine, so they drive it and they pull it up onto a conveyor belt, put it between two rollers, crush it, put it on a barge behind that boat and go dump it somewhere.
The latest tool is a bug.
The way everyone would like to be able to control these plants is through biological control. So go back to where they came from and see if there are any organisms that conduct their life history solely on that plant.
The state has had some success with the Salvinia weevil, but the carp are more difficult.
We have some people like to fish for them with bow and arrows. They tend to sit in shallow water, so we have some bow and arrow hunters that like to go shoot carp. And we've tried commercially harvesting them, but they're very difficult to fillet.
This is the first time USGS has put together a map like this.
This doesn't necessarily say that there are, that species have been moved, but it's more of these species have the potential to have been moved, and here's what you guys should be looking out for.
They hope to make it more precise with time and more data. When I interviewed Nielsen, he said the team was working on another map to show the effects of Hurricane Irma. I really would have liked to see a map for the floods last year. I think that would have been interesting.
How about that? Always good stuff. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
The most recent CDC report on HIV shows an 18% decline in infections nationwide from 2008 to 2014. Yet Louisiana still ranks number 2 nationally for its rate in HIV diagnosis. Baton Rouge and New Orleans rank 2nd and 3rd nationally among major metropolitan areas for their HIV rates. Now, this month, Louisiana Public Square explores why the state's rates are so high and what resources are available for preventing and treating the disease. A recent report indicates that while the state's overall HIV rates have declined, in rural Louisiana they've slightly increased due to stigma and lack of healthcare access. But a new drug regimen is beginning to show huge promise in stalling the disease.
When the CDC released their report and said, HIV has been decreased in Louisiana by 14%, in Louisiana, people think it's handled. But in Louisiana, in rural areas, it's on an increase. It's not handled. And people need to know their status. And they need to, and the only way you know your status is to get tested.
PrEP stands for pre-exposure prophylaxis. Research has shown that pre-exposure prophylaxis with a medicine called Truvada, which is a combination of 2 medicines. If somebody is HIV negative and take the PrEP on a daily basis, he does not contract HIV.
We are working towards finding individuals who are living with HIV, may not be aware of their diagnosis, discovering that they're HIV positive, linking them into care, and then being able to have access to antiretroviral medications and viral suppression is going to be a significant prevention tool, as well as obviously taking care of that individual's overall health. And then on the other side, we have PrEP for individuals who are HIV negative. And I think that with those two significant tools in our toolbox, we really see the opportunity that we can end this epidemic.
HIV/AIDS in Louisiana airs Wednesday at 7 p.m. here on LPB. For more information, you can visit the series website at lpb.org/public square. New Orleans artist Jacqueline Bishop will be a special guest of LPB's Art of Food dinner Sunday night at LPB headquarters. James Fox Smith, host of Art Rocks, helps head up the event. Bishop explains how she uses her work to emphasize her concern for our natural habitats.
It's very important to me to have the freedom of expression politically, poetically, and I would hope that no two viewers would have the same view of the work, because how can that be? I mean, we're all coming from different histories, different personal stories and experiences. I'm very concerned about the environment, the future, but also the past and what we've already done that can never be repaired. I work in many different mediums, painting primarily, watercolor, collage, assemblage. I really love printmaking because of the surprise that it brings when you pull the paper off of the press. But I love the whole meditation of painting, getting up every day, knowing that you're going to go back into that painting where you left off yesterday and completing it and knowing when it's done. But I love watercolor because of the spontaneity of it, especially the method that I use over collage. It's just very filled also with surprises. I love birds and bird imagery, and I started having to do more research on the birds and found out that a lot of the birds I had been painting were extinct, which seemed like a pretty strong word to describe anything. I realized that my paintings contained extinct species without even knowing it, and that took me in that direction, which ended up taking me all over the world to study birds, to travel with scientists, to study the landscape, and of course looking at my own landscape from the Mississippi Gulf Coast to the Louisiana landscape that is disappearing. And as much as I never considered myself a landscape painter, I was a landscape painter. Combining science with art was not really a priority of mine. I didn't set out to do that. It just happened, I think, more through the birds and having to do more research to find the subject matter that I wanted to use informed my paintings. And my work has always been about the narrative. I like storytelling, but I also like real stories, whether they are real landscapes or not. Probably my landscapes are imaginary, but telling real stories. From the vine to the vein, a female tree shape with a bird head, and the branches turn into arms, and everything is absolutely connected in that painting. But the background is a beautiful, kind of a fiery red sky. So beautiful, but our beautiful skies and sunsets are beautiful because of the chemicals in the sky, because of the chemicals in the refineries, or from the cattle ranching, or from the cities with all of the pollution coming out of them. They change the color to something so beautiful, but we're not supposed to be breathing it. World View is a larger scale painting, and it is very nest-like in the subject matter. There's the earth in the very middle of it, but it's almost camouflaged with everything. And right in the center is a howler monkey that I have seen in Brazil making an announcement. And the mouth of the monkey is wide open, screaming at the top of its lungs. And everything around it is very close-knit, nest-like, built by something. But many of them are leaving that nest, or it's unraveling on its own or by something. It doesn't feel as comfortable and beautiful as it looks on the surface. Because I do observe the landscape and I have this affiliation with garbage and discarded objects, and whether it be natural or man-made, I did notice many years ago how many baby shoes were in the landscape. And I started picking them up and putting them in my backpack. Thought, well, you know, I'm going to do something with these. And then I started painting them, painting landscapes on them, because I realized the correlation between the landscape and children and our memories to the landscape, and how it is disappearing beneath their feet because of the decisions adults have made about it. So it seemed very important to cover them with the landscape.
New Orleans artist Jacqueline Bishop. And that's our show for this week. Remember, you can watch LPB On Demand on your phone or tablet with our LPB Anywhere app. The download is free from your app store. You can catch LPB news and public affairs shows, as well as other Louisiana programs that you've come to enjoy over the years. And please like us on Facebook as well. For everyone at Louisiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Andre Morrow. Thanks for watching us. Until next time, that's the state we're in.
Check us out on Facebook and Twitter, and visit lpb.org, where you can view more stories and leave us a comment. This program is available on DVD. Support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum. Located in Jennings City Hall, the museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is a historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. Additional support provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.